Good morning. There has been a great deal of interest by the public and from our elected officials about an incident that took place on May 9th, 2019 at the McDonald's restaurant at 11146 New Hampshire Avenue in White Oak. In the interest of transparency, today we are releasing 205 minutes of video taken with body-worn cameras by our officers that were on the scene. This is a release of all the body-worn camera footage available. One of our officers, Sergeant McDaniel, did not turn on his camera immediately as is required, but did turn it on as the incident progressed. I also want to emphasize that you will hear on this tape language from our officers that is decidedly unprofessional. It violates our departmental policy. It is not acceptable to me, and it is not acceptable to our community. Before getting into the details of the incident, I want to make it clear that I cannot discuss or take questions on any details of our investigation internally, as it is still in progress. I would like to set a broader context for the events of May 9th than has been made available previously. Our officers are very familiar with the White Oak area and with the McDonald's restaurant specifically. The beat involved here is one of the busiest in terms of calls for service. Within that beat, this McDonald's restaurant is one of the establishments that most frequently generates calls for service. In 2018, there were 192 calls for service, with 57 of those dealing with trespassing. Through June 15th of this year, there have been 53 calls for service, with 21 of those for trespassing. The manager of this restaurant not only encourages his employees to call the police when there are issues, he also requested that we take action when officers view a situation that might be disruptive to the business or which we believe might be of a criminal nature. We work with the McDonald's to make certain there is a safe environment for customers and employees. In this instance, our officer approached the 4 individuals involved outside of the restaurant and asked them to move along. The reporting and social media postings at the time reflected the view that we unfairly and perhaps illegally accosted and searched young men who had been customers of the restaurant and were waiting to be picked up to be taken to work. The evidence from our investigation presents a different view. This is not what some people call a random stop and frisk action. It began with the officer approaching the 4 men in the video and asking them to move along. At that point, and what was not apparent on social media video of the incident, was that our officer detected an odor of marijuana on at least 2 of the individuals. This was probable cause for arrest, and the reason why the individuals and a backpack were searched. Marijuana was recovered from 2 of the subjects. We have also determined through security camera video that none of the men were customers of the restaurant. None had ordered, consumed, or picked up food or drinks inside the restaurant. This was not an incident of racial profiling. Our officers are trained in constitutional policing while in the training academy and after they graduate. We exceed the state standards in this area. We do not tolerate racial profiling, and it was not in evidence here. At the end of the day, all of the men were issued trespass notices, and 2 were issued Maryland civil citations for marijuana possession. You will see on the video that at least one of the men was familiar with that process. For the record, The store manager has asked that the trespass notices given to the 4 men not be rescinded as some others have requested. Thank you for your attention. The video will be posted online for your viewing shortly after we conclude here. And again, I want to apologize for the language of our officers that you will hear in the videos. I am disappointed with it, and I want to be clear that it does not meet our standards. At this time, I'll take some questions. Yes?
Chief, you said that you were disappointed in the language you saw your officers and heard them using on the video. Was that beyond the use of the N-word? And could you be more specific? Was this involving multiple officers? And what is being done after that to make sure that people are speaking in, I guess, a professional way to citizens?
So it's a good question. So first of all, it's we've identified that, and you will see this on the video by a few of the officers, not all of them. That is a part of the internal affairs investigation. We will address that via our policy. We are doing some retraining on professional conduct with our officers throughout the rest of this year and continue, and to remind our officers about our their expected performance and professionalism when dealing with individuals in our community.
Chief, you said that language that we're going to hear doesn't comply with your standards. Is use of that language an offense that would merit some kind of penalty, suspension, actual disciplinary action, or simply a reminder of this is not who the force is?
So within our policies, we do have a decorum for the use of language, and we expect our officers to always adhere to that policy. And when they violate such policy, there are penalties that go with that policy. I mean, with the violation of that. Okay.
Chief, overall, this entire incident, what is it that you found wrong? Was it just the language that was used, or was there anything else that you believe your officers did that they are going to be disciplined?
So let me be clear. The internal affairs investigation is not over, okay? So I don't want to jump to conclusion about everything that we found wrong, because we're looking in depthly at 9 officers that are involved in this. All of them are under investigation, okay? So when we look at this from an internal standpoint, we will look to identify what policies did they violate for Montgomery County Police. And we will address those accordingly through the disciplinary process that we have that also is impacted by the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights.
And if I can follow up, there was an initial question as to the reasons why these men stopped. Now, you said that they were told to move along. Was that captured on any of the body cameras?
No, not the initial interaction, as noted by Sergeant McDaniel, who didn't have his camera on initially. He does turn his camera on later in the interaction, but not initially. But what we do know, based upon information that we've gathered, is that Sergeant McDaniel was very aware of the individuals that he was approaching. We have had problems at that McDonald's about complaints about drug usage and drug dealing inside of that and outside of that McDonald's. And Sergeant McDaniel and those officers that work in that particular area are very well, they know the issues that they have as it relates to the different types of problems that we have in that particular beat and at that particular establishment. So again, the initial reaction from Sergeant McDaniel when he saw these individuals was that he asked them to move along. They refused to move along initially, and then the interaction continued.
Chief, you said there's going to be some retraining of officers going on this year. What do those retraining practices look like?
When it looks like is that what we do is several different types of retraining. But when we look at professionalism, we talk about the expected behavior. We talk about language. We talk about decorum. We talk about all of those things. That will be a part of our training. Officers go through in-service training every single year, no matter how many years of service you have on this department. Each year we are commissioned to have X amount of hours of training. We go above and beyond what the state recommends for us, because we see other issues that we deem sometimes that we need to address or new things that are introduced to us. We have several ways to do this training, but we will make sure that each and every officer on this department is trained in that.
Chief, this is the second incident in which the public is asking questions about police conduct. One involved criminal charges. I know it's a large force, about 1,200 sworn officers?
1,300.
1,300. Are these incidents suggestive of a wider problem within the department? Are you concerned about the impact on community relations? I know the other day the state's attorney expressed real concern about police community relations and confidence in the office.
So the one thing I do want to stress is that, when these incidents happen, they get a lot of media attention. They get a lot of attention on social media and beyond. And we understand that. We get complaints from time to time on our officers, but this is not something that I've seen widespread as being a problem as it relates to the issues surrounding this incident and the incident that happened on last week that was captured. But what I would say from a standpoint of community engagement, we have been engaging with our community for quite some time, right? Even after Ferguson, we stepped up the ability to do more community policing, to do more community engagement with our different communities, particularly those who we consider to be underserved and that we have not had the greatest relationships with. There's always work to do. This department can be better at what we do. We are from the human race. We are not robots. We are not perfect in our own right. But I will tell you, when you look at the overall work that we do with communities, many of the great work and the good work that's being done, that's not being captured. We don't see that on the news, okay? We don't see that written in certain media publications. We understand that, but that doesn't stop us from doing what we need to do and how we should do it and how we could do it better. So I will tell you that we continue to work and strive to be a better police department, and I expect every police officer to try to improve their performance on a daily basis.
Chief, certain residents have drawn attention to the suspects in the N-word incident and also last week's incident, that there was a lack of cooperation with police and that the situation might not have nearly gotten as heated had there been cohesiveness between the suspects and the police. Do you care to comment on that in terms of what individuals in the community should do if police ask them some questions and want to inquire about what they're doing, say, at McDonald's?
Sure. I think that's a great question. When I think there's times when there's definitely been, and there remains, contentious relationships that we have with some members of our community. And that when we've asked them to do some of the things that would eliminate even these types of altercations, they refuse to do that. So in this case, for example, Sergeant McDaniel asked the individuals if they would move along. Point blank, if they move along, end of discussion. One of the subjects decided that, no, I don't want to move along, and had some foul language to share back with Sergeant McDaniel. So that kind of starts the initiation. The other incident at McDonald's in Aspen Hill, the subject was sitting at a booth at McDonald's. He was asked to get up because he was under arrest. He refused to get up after being asked, at least from what I've been told, 10 times. That's what leads to resisting, and now we go to another step. Okay, again, we look at that from that view, but we do try to get people to cooperate to eliminate and minimize these types of interactions and altercations that we have with our public. And if they want to argue that or disagree that they are being treated unfairly, there's a process we can go about doing that. But we want to try to eliminate any of these types of confrontations at all, and we do our best to strive to try to eliminate that. Yes,
Chief,
ma'am.
you said that 9 officers are under investigation in connection with the incident, the first incident. But isn't it true that no officers were placed on administrative leave? There's been no action taken, and they're all still out on the street doing their job today?
No, they are not all out doing their jobs today. The officer who utilized the N-word was removed from her duties, and she's been placed on desk duty. When officers are placed under investigation, right, every complaint that we have against an officer, that would imply that we remove every officer that we get a complaint on, which would mean that we would probably have very few officers in certain areas that we would need, because of all complaints are not proven to be true, okay? So we have to give the officer fair, right, treatment in that regard, and give them fair, the fair assessment of whether the complaint is valid or not. So the other 8, again, they are on the street. They have not been removed. They remain in their duties. Okay, some might be moved to other locations, but they remained in their duties of doing police work. Okay, but they are under investigation. Again, we look at these cases seriously. Some charges that they might be alleged to have committed may not be serious at all. Some of them may not have committed an offense. Okay, so to be fair, even though they're under investigation, it doesn't mean that they're guilty. That's what I want to make sure everybody understands. Just because they are does not mean that they are guilty. Okay?
Chief, in looking at, you said you were disappointed with the language that was used. It's not acceptable in the department. When you looked at the footage that we're going to see, I know your officers are trained in de-escalation, and I
Right.
know it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but when you look at it with your experience, could they have acted differently and gotten a different outcome in the White Oak incident?
So in the White Oak incident, I would say when we talk about de-escalation is when people's sort of temperature is like way up high. It might be a more combative type incident. This incident didn't really rise to that. There was a lot of language being utilized. There was a lot of discussion, but it never got contentious to the fact that somebody wanted to physically hurt somebody else on either side. It never got to be that. Okay, so they were, and I'll answer that question. They were placed in handcuffs because they were under arrest. That's not a physical confrontation, okay? So the reality is that, you know, our officers are trained in de-escalation, and we expect them to utilize those tools. You will recognize on much of the videotapes, officers having very cordial conversations with some of the individuals that they know well. It's almost like a friendly type situation in the sense that because they know that particular individual. They have dealt with that individual before. And this is one of the individuals who actually even gets placed in handcuffs and who was charged with possession of marijuana. So the reality is that those types of interactions happen with us daily, okay? This interaction did not rise to a point that I thought that de-escalation was at such a point that they needed to really exercise it. But there was times that, you know, again, language was here and there. I'll take his question and then yours, ma'am.
Chief, just on another subject, on the police chief search, I wonder if you could just give your feelings briefly on the fact that you were not one of the 2 finalists and just the process overall.
I'm not going to share any additional information in response to the chief search. I've made my point known that I'm disappointed, and I'll leave it at that. Yes, ma'am.
In regards to the incident a few days ago when there was physical or excessive force used and the de-escalation training, what could have been done? Is there like pepper spray that could have been deployed? Was there tasers that could have been deployed? Like were there certain...
Are you talking about the case in Aspen Hill?
Yes.
So in Aspen Hill, the only thing I will state to that is that the individual was already under arrest. Okay, he had handcuffs even though he continued to kick, spit, and do some other things. There could have been, I think, some better options being made. I won't go into that specifically, but I think the officers had some other choices that they probably could have made.
Is there like a protocol though? Like,
There's no protocol. The point of our use of force in our policy is utilizing the amount of force necessary to minimize the threat or to eliminate any assaults or anything of that nature. Yes.
Chief, you talked with a number of officers in the wake of both of these McDonald's incidents and just the regime change, the county executive and council's offices. They feel that to a degree that there's kind of a war underway against the police department. What would be your assessment or grade of how the main politicians in Montgomery County have responded to some of these incidents in the last few months?
So I will say this, I don't disagree that there are officers who are somewhat disappointed with, I think they're sort of the accusations that the public and some people in the public and some politicians have put them in the framework of being less than professional police as a police department overall, not just the incidents that we had, but just putting everybody in the same bubble. And I think that upsets people because at the end of the day, when you go out here and you put your life on the line and you do everything in your power to do the right thing and you do it right and you do it well, but yet you're put into the same stigma as everyone else, that's disappointing and frustrating. I want, as always in my 33 years career, I would always want to come to work enjoying what I do and having some value in what I do and meaning something valuable for the community. And I think many officers on this department feel exactly the same way. I would say this, I think that there's opportunities here. And the opportunities exist that I would hope that politicians would take pause sometimes and come to us and have a discussion with us before they decide to go and put information out that may not be necessarily true. We have to sometimes slow down our investigations because we have to figure out exactly what's going on, right? But sometimes people in the world of social media, they want to be the first of the first. They decide that they need to be on Twitter first or Facebook first to tell the story. And the story is not absolutely factual, just like in this case, not absolutely factual. So that would be my only ask. And I think, again, for the officers, for Montgomery County Police, in my 33 years, and I will tell you, I am proud to lead them today. I have been proud to be a Montgomery County police officer for my entire career. It's a great community. We have a community where crime is well below the national level. And I would hope, and part of that is because we have officers who are proactive, who go out here, who are proactive, who know their neighborhoods, who try to prevent violence from occurring in several of these neighborhoods where we have had drug-related homicides, we have had drive-by shootings, and these officers are standing in the front line making sure the people that live in those communities who don't have a microphone put in front of their faces and don't have a voice, we are their voice. We are the voice for those citizens who need us the most. And we won't stop doing that today, and we won't stop doing it tomorrow, whatever time that ends for anybody's career. I can promise you Montgomery County will do that forever, okay? So thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you. That was Acting Chief Marcus Jones. We will be releasing the statement that he provided and the body camera footage. It'll be out shortly after we complete this.